Hello, everybody, and welcome to a relatively brief video from Greg Synth Bootlegs. And what I mean by relatively brief, I promise it will be less than an hour, and I'm pretty sure I can squeeze a lot of content in under half an hour. So hopefully the video is going to be relatively brief, but I'm going to be making this video in relation to the tier makers because the TierMaker process deserves a bit of an update and to match what's been going on my sister channel, Greg Synth Wizard. Um, on the video that you see right now, you see a bare bones tier maker. And instead of 6 or 7 tiers, as what you saw on the previous two Queen related tier maker episodes, there's now 8. We have Allstar, S, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Now, the decision to put an additional tier on here for F, um, it was discussed many months ago, actually among my friends that helped me with the Elton John tier makers, because we originally had 7 tiers on that channel, and after talking with them about Elton John shows and kind of going back and forth on like, well, if this is worse, then this should be here, or we were kind of debating like where to put specific shows that actually have no relation to the tier maker episodes that are currently up right there, but just for the future, we wanted to like make things a little easier and avoid some of those outcomes where we're like, well, it's in between this tier and that tier. And we figured if we added an extra tier, it would help out. And we found out that it has been very helpful because we recently did a tier maker on Elton John's later 86 tour legs, and not only was the final tier used, but it helped out flesh rankings on some other shows too that would have probably been ranked differently if it weren't for the extra tier. So it was actually very helpful. And I figured the same thing needs to come across to the world of Gregson's bootlegs and the Queen uploads, because I figured that although not right this second, not for the recent tier maker that I did for the 74 Sheer Heart Attack tour, or anything really upcoming. Obviously, I'm not going to be using F tier or E or any of that stuff, but I figured that having the extra tier would be helpful, and it can help make things a little bit easier when it comes to ranking stuff. And I figured that you know today's a good day to kind of explain the updated tier maker and kind of give a brief explanation on the rankings again with the updated terms, and give a better sort of summarization on what to expect. The first tier maker to use the up-to-date rankings, as you see here, is the one that's going to be featured very shortly on the channel. It was the 1974 Sheer Heart Attack tour, and that was a really fun tier maker. And despite me being sick as a dog and suffering from a really bad cold, bit of a flu, and a lot of nagging symptoms like swollen lymph nodes and bad throat and everything, it was still a really fun tier maker, and I highly enjoyed it. A lot of fun banter, and I hope we can continue that momentum because it was a very fun event. And having the extra tier on that tier maker, um, although obviously we didn't put anything in F or anything really low, if we didn't have the extra tier, maybe something would have been ranked slightly differently. But for the up-to-date tier maker information, I'm going to start with the ranking system. And as you know, as you see on the left-hand side of the screen there, you see the All-Star through the F. Obviously, All-Star best, F is the worst. And I thought I would give a little bit of an explanation on what each of these tiers mean, and kind of give examples if I can without spoiling things. I realize that it's really, really early in the Queen tier makers because the Queen 1 and the Queen 2 tier makers are already up on YouTube, and we just did the third one for 74 Sheer Heart Attack. So, it's very early to kind of do an up to date video for the rankings, but I figured I would rather get it done now, and instead of having to, wait a bunch of months and then coming back and, explaining things about the rankings. But I'm going to give a brief explanation and try to explain something about a show without spoiling it or something, if I can. So I'll begin with the Allstar, and I'll just take one of these random pictures of the band and just kind of drag it through, the tiers just to explain. So the All-Star ranking at the top, obviously that's the best ranking you can get. The All-Star ranking are for those shows that are just extra special. Like, the band are completely on top of their game. There a ton of highlights. Freddie is in top form. The band are just not only just playing excellently, but they're pushing themselves, to go beyond their natural limit. So they're giving a little extra. And there's a lot of special things that would happen on these shows. Say maybe the atmosphere is awesome and that's kicking the band in the pants to give 150% instead of 100. It's just, they're truly special shows. These are absolutely those shows that you cannot skip. And yes, at least in my view, Queen has had shows like that. Although, when you start getting into the other tiers like A and S, the All-Star shows, while not completely rare, you won't see them pop up all the time. Those are truly special shows, like kind of reserved for those shows with the extra punch, given the extra effort. Just all around amazing stuff, and there has to be something like truly special going on. So, I know Queen has played a lot of great shows, a lot of excellent shows, but I know there's quite a few of those top tier shows that are just, they're in their own category, and that's what the All Star ranking would be. Then we drop to the next one down, which is S. Now S is reserved for the shows that's just general excellence, just very, very strong shows. General excellence, some amazing performances. There's not too much difference between an All-Star and S, with the exception of maybe, well, the main difference would be S would be like, this is a fantastic show, everything is going right pretty much, and then All-Star would be, this is a special show, like, you have got to listen to this, and so there's some overlap in some of the credentials, but All Stars will have a little bit more grit to them, a little bit more special stuff going on, a little more highlights. S, nothing to sneeze at. It's general excellence. Musicianship is usually almost spot on. Top tier. Freddie's voice would be excellent usually, or at least in very, very good shape. So these are just all around excellent shows. And again, those shows are also highly recommended. And Queen's played, a lot of good ones. So, S is your general excellent shows. Next one would be A. Now A is considered to be, they're good shows. Very listenable. Very good shows overall. Some excellent performances. A lot of great moments. Still would recommend people check those shows out. But when you start to get to A, now the differences between other people's tier makers and this one would be, some people would use 4 or 5 tiers for tier makers. Like they would do like A B C D or A B C D E or S A B C D or something like that. I have the extra tiers for organizational purposes and to help me rank things a bit easier. But someone's A show on their tier maker may be equivalent to like an S on mine or an Allstar. But for this specific tier maker, like my style, A's are generally very good shows. Still would recommend stuff. Now, when you get to A, this is where you might start seeing some hiccups start to form here and there. Like maybe, okay, the band's tight, it's great, but maybe I've heard a couple shows that are better. Maybe there's some off bits here and there, but nothing major. Freddie might sound great as usual, or he might have a little bit of a rougher night, but still reasonably good. Or Freddie sounds okay, pretty good, but the band's carrying the show and it kind of evens it out. So A is generally very good, and generally Queen played shows in the upper tiers of this tier maker. So A's and S's are going to be probably the most common ranks. But A is still a respectable ranking and one that you shouldn't be ashamed to put a show in. For the B tier shows, now this is where consistency may start to be affected a bit because B can mean a couple different definitions. It can mean it's a pretty good show, perfectly fine, decent, nothing terrible. But B would be okay. It's good, but I've heard better. These could be shows that, well, maybe a bit run of the mill, or it could be some consistency issues where you can have some great performances, but then some other performances may be a bit off. And then you start to average things out, and that's really when those tier maker discussions really come into play because someone may rank a B show because it's generally pretty good, but nothing amazing. Others may rank something in B because, well, there's 5 amazing performances, but there's a few off ones, and this is where the discussions really need to take place, just to kind of get everybody on the same page. But B can be, they're pretty good, they're solid, maybe nothing special, maybe there's consistency issues. And then to kind of give examples of some of these rankings, for for stuff on the Queen 1 and the Queen 2 tours, I had New Orleans at B because it's a very energetic show. The band's spirited, but Freddie's having a bit of a rough night at the office, and some of the vocals don't sound really healthy. And then A shows we would have a lot of the stuff from the Queen 2 tour would be in there because it's generally very strong musically and good vocals. Just because it's really early in the tier maker, so I don't want to give too much away because I know there's some special shows I want to drag in certain rankings, but I'd rather talk it out with people. But yeah, B is solid, okay, pretty good. But there are issues at these shows that aren't on the A, S, and All-Star shows. Some shows in B I would recommend, or at least, hey, have a listen to, but that's where I'm starting to kind of deviate from, you gotta listen to this, because I definitely would recommend shows in A up over B and down. So then that'll get to C tier. Now for C tier, now we're starting to get into territory where okay, it's starting to get rough. C tier shows could be very inconsistent. Maybe the band's having a bad night at the office. There's maybe a lot of sloppy playing. Freddie maybe having a bad night, inconsistent. Just all this is where it starts to get questionable. And it could be shows where maybe people are starting to phone it in a bit on stage. It could be just, nothing really special going on. Or you could have passable shows that are not terrible, but not great. Like they're just on stage and it's okay. Because usually, a C is about average ranking, but C for the tier maker would be, it could be okay at best or passable, but nothing amazing. There could be consistency issues. There could be problems with Freddie's voice that are dragging performances down, or the band might be having a rough night at the office. But generally, C tier, you really don't want to be having shows there because I usually wouldn't recommend stuff in C. But there's still a chance that C tier shows may have some shining diamonds in them. Like maybe a few performances are kind of shining above the others. And I might recommend performances, but generally, as whole gigs, not really. And then for D tier, okay, mediocrity is starting to creep in. Now, these are the shows where not only will I not really recommend it, but when you start to get into D tier, these are shows where you might want to be a little more cautious on listening to these. These shows have a lot of noticeable problems with it. Definitely has consistency issues. Freddie might have a really bad night. The band might be having a bad night, maybe a lot of mistakes, a lot of sloppy playing. But when you start getting into D tier, that's where you start to notice a lot of issues creeping up on shows where you don't brush it off as just a minor error here and there. There's like a lot of things going on that's really noticeable, and it starts to really impact the shows. Um, Definitely would not recommend shows in the D tier, but again, like C, you might find a few performances that are good or at least not fraught with errors. But D is just generally mediocre. Some passable elements, some bad moments mixed in, but generally not where you want a show to be in, unless you drop to a lower tier, which in that case D would be better than E. Now E, we start to get into poor shows, shows that definitely do not recommend listening to unless you want to hear off nights or maybe some bad comedy on performances like really really bad vocals or just really really off musicianship or just now when you get to E, these are the shows where there's a lot of things going on that will hamper the show or affect the quality of the performances or extreme consistency issues. There's, thankfully I haven't run into those shows yet. With the tier makers that are currently on YouTube and the recently finished 74 sheer heart attack one, I can assure you that nothing was ranked in these lower tiers. But E shows, it's generally poor. Pretty bad. And this is where we start to kind of get some overlap into D and F because with D it's generally mediocre, but you can find some, redeeming moments and maybe some good in there, kind of mixed in with the bad stuff. E is like okay, it's bad, but there might be something there that would keep it out of F. Like maybe you'll find some, a good performance here and there that's mixed in with some really bad stuff. Maybe Freddie is just having a really bad vocal night, but the band are playing to compensate, and it's kind of helping to elevate the performances a bit. But E shows are really affected by issues, and definitely would not recommend them. Um, you don't want to be in that rank, and you especially don't want to be in the last rank, which F, that's as bad as you can get. Oh Lord, oh Lord, he's singing. Oh Lord, they're playing. F is flat out bad, like similar to E, except very few, if anything of note on these shows that would be considered positives. Just painful listens, or just nothing special is going on. You might get just, there's so many errors going on at the show that it really drastically affects the show, and it affects the listening experience. Um, Definitely would stay away from shows like that. You might find shows where, man, like they needed to get off the stage and go home, or Freddie needed to see a doctor, or it those shows, especially F, when you look at those lower tiers, um, that's where you start running into big problems. So I have a few different pictures here that kind of represent you know this demo here. And so, you can have tier makers where you have, something up here, and, you can drag them around just to, fill in the gaps and to rank them. I mean, I've had Elton tier makers where we've had a string of all stars up here and then S's here. We've had stuff down at F and D. Like no tier maker episode will be the same as another one. Like the Queen 1 and the Queen 2 ones definitely don't look alike, and the upcoming Sheer Heart Attack one from '74 definitely does not look anything like the previous ones. So, I hope this you know kind of will give you a little bit of insight on the up-to-date tier maker. I'm glad it got up to date. I'm glad I discussed it with other people, because I really feel that having the extra tier can help with balancing shows and help with organization, and will help with discussions out. And we did use this up to date one for the upcoming Sheer Heart Attack tour one, and that is going to be the default tier maker style used. And there are currently no plans to add any more tiers. I think 8 is absolutely the limit. I can't think of anything else to add to it, and it would start to get silly. So that's it from me. I hope you guys have a nice day, and I hope that you enjoy the upcoming uploads. Have a nice day.